Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out the story behind Breakfast in America is more upsetting than you thought. Okay, prepare yourself for some depression.
You could say Supertramp took the slow road to success. Their blend of proggy pop rock, clever lyrics, and complex arrangements didn't exactly burst onto the scene, but Breakfast in America changed everything for them.
Teach me how to be sensible, logical.
And this one is a request from Dawn Mist. That's a stage name, apparently. Supertramp was her favourite band growing up. And there's a link in the description, as always, if you want to make a request yourself.
Y'all, I remember this album cover, and I remember, how was this waitress? Is she on the wing of a plane? Because we're looking at a plane window. What's happening here? Is this the Twilight Zone movie? The Logical Song. I didn't realize that was Supertramp. I thought that was like REO Speedwagon or something. I guess I thought Supertramp was heavier. I thought they were like a hair band or something. They have hair, but I thought they were like an 80s heavy metal band or something.
So let's start at the beginning. Supertramp formed in 1969. Rick Davies had been living in Munich and moved to London. Now here we meet an important character in the story, a Dutch millionaire by the name of Stanley August Misserhaas. At least I think that's how you pronounce it. He wanted to fund a band and offered to help get them started with rehearsal spaces, living expenses, and even instruments.
What?
Davies probably couldn't believe his luck.
Yeah.
Back in London, he placed an ad in Melody Maker looking for bandmates, and that lineup would soon change, but they did record their first album together, 1970s Supertramp.
Well, how did they meet? How lucky is that? You meet a millionaire who just wants to fund you? What kind of arrangement was that? Stanley August Misserhaas. Stanley August. Okay, there he is. What's the deal with him? He was a Dutch millionaire living in Switzerland. He financed the first two studio albums of Supertramp. In 1969, he, in Munich, saw an appearance of singer-keyboardist Rick Davies and his band The Joint. Misserhaas was very impressed with Davies' musical talent and offered him cash sum. The condition was that Davies would shape his own new band. That became the band Supertramp. Wow. After financing the first two albums, Misserhaas stopped financial support. Okay. Wonder why. The next album, Crime of the Century, was assigned to Misserhaas. Since then, nothing has been learned about him in the field of music finance. The total amount Misserhaas put into the tire amounts to £60,000. I mean, that's pocket change to a millionaire, right? That's all they're going to tell us? So he saw Rick Davies at a gig, and he's like, I like you. While the rest of these people you're performing with are crap. This says he gave Rick Davies an opportunity to form the band of his dreams, and Misserhaas would bankroll the lot. Davies placed an advertisement, and One of the responses came from the youngest, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's about all we know. Was he a mensch, or did he have other agendas happening?
Back in London, he placed an ad in Melody Maker looking for bandmates, and that lineup would soon change, but they did record their first album together,
There was a phone number there. 0303-66371. I was thinking of calling that, but I'm not going to.
Mates. And that lineup would soon change, but they did record their first album together, 1970s Supertramp. This early album was a sort of psychedelic prog rock thing, and it failed to sell. But this doesn't mean it wasn't any good. It was ambitious, definitely, but also quite moody. The themes are intense and often introspective, talking about searches for meaning and feelings of alienation. I think the cover art kind of tells you what you need to know.
Only could we try to get by on the side.
The album cover looks like a demigorgon.
When the album failed to make an impact, the band went through a series of lineup changes. The band went in a bit more of a rock direction on the next album. 1971's Indelibly Stamped was much more bluesy and rocky, quite a departure from their first album.
Finding out is half the fun. When you find out.
Very different.
The lyrical themes were a bit more accessible as well. They were obviously trying to make their music more digestible. But sadly, this album didn't make any impact either, and their sponsor, the Dutch millionaire, lost patience. He withdrew his funding and cut ties with the band. But they didn't.
Stanley August Masala. So only 60,000 pounds is what you put into it. This was back in the day when a band could find their sound over several albums. Now, if you don't have a hit on the first one, you're dropped. But at least Stanley August Masala gave them a couple albums, but they may have needed a couple more.
Give up, a sure sign of any great band. Hodgson and Davis had developed an interesting dynamic as songwriters. Davis had a darker, blues-rooted sound, which at times could turn a little cynical. Hodgson's style was a counterpoint. He was more melodic, and his lyrics were emotionally vulnerable. And finally,
this reminds me of Lennon-McCartney, everyone.
He was more melodic, and his lyrics were emotionally vulnerable. And finally, people listened on their third album, Crime of the Century, released in 1974. They still tackled heavy lyrical themes, but they'd managed to package up into something more listenable. And people did. Now, I'd love to play you more of that song, but as you probably know, YouTube doesn't really allow that. I do upload extended versions of all my videos on Patreon, though, so you can get the true experience. There's about 60 of us over there at the moment, all nerding out about great music, and you're very welcome to join if you fancy. It's patreon.com/musicmongoose.
Y'all be sure to go to Music Mongoose and like and subscribe and maybe become like a patron if you want to nerd out. If you'd like to support my channel here, I also have a Patreon, link in the description. I cannot promise any interaction because I'm lazy.
So this was also when they brought in something that would become a bit of a trademark for the band. Heavy use of a Wurlitzer piano. They also upped their studio game and brought in other things like a saxophone, for example. Simply put, their music was just more interesting than before. And the timing was good. This was when prog and psychedelic bands were really big.
A Wurlitzer. That's a interesting choice to base the band around. But now that I'm thinking of that, the Wurlitzer is prominent in that the Logic song, right? One of my favorite Wurlitzer riffs is Where It's At by Beck.
Pink Floyd had released Dark Side of the Moon a year before, and Genesis pretty much owned the UK prog scene. It was the era of sitting down in a dark room with a complex album and a set of good headphones. Crime of the Century sold well. It actually hit number 4 in the UK albums chart, and
That's really
the
good.
US too. Supertramp had arrived and were finally on the map, and finally making money from their music.
Oh, Stanley August Masala must have been pissed off. That's what you get, Stanley. He pulled out too quick.
And this is going to be an important point later on. Their next couple of albums were all about refining and perfecting their sound. They knew who they were by now, but they were perfectionists. And I think that pretty much brings us up to Breakfast in America. This is the album that would ultimately make and break that band. Why is that so often the case? They went into the studio in 1978.
Wow, I forgot the Twin Towers are on there. You kind of forget how big the Twin Towers were until you see a photo like this, or painting.
Why is that so often the case? They went into the studio in 1978, and the Hodgson-Davis dynamic was in full strength. The themes and styles of Breakfast in America go a lot deeper than most people realize.
Oh.
They co-wrote most of
I'm realizing now that
in America go a lot deeper.
some of these buildings are chess pieces, aren't they? Oh, and there's coffee cups. Maybe it's a salt shaker. Oh yeah, salt and pepper. A cream thing. That's not New York. That's a breakfast table. I never noticed that before. Hang on. Where was this recorded? Supertramp's Breakfast in America was recorded in 1978 at the Village Recorder in Los Angeles. Y'all, that's down the street. Show me on a map. That studio was built for Fleetwood Mac. It's a legendary studio. A lot of stuff's been recorded there. It's a great studio. They got a Neve console in there. Yeah. Legendary studio. Legendary Neve console. Yep. There it is. Oh. Yeah. That's the one. Okay, back to the video.
They co-wrote most of the songs and mostly shared vocal duties, but each of them did take the lead on a few tracks. Roger Hodgson's signature high-pitched vocals carry most of the songs, and while some of the songs sound melodic and bright, if you pay attention to the lyrics, there's a lot going on. They were still using those heavy themes, songs about feeling lost and trying to find your place in the world. Lord Is It Mine is a great example.
I know that there's a reason why I need to be alone.
Wow. He sounds like a woman there. Let's hear it again.
I know that there's a reason why I need to be alone.
Wow.
And then Rick Davies sings lead vocals on a couple of songs as well. His songs on the album bring a slightly different energy. His vocals are a bit rougher. And where Hodgson has this sort of dreamy thing going on, Davies is a bit more direct, singing about the frustrations of the daily grind and trivial social interactions. But underneath it all, you've got both their input. And they manage to make these heavy themes still sound catchy, using poppy melodies to sort of gloss over the top. It's a hard line to walk, but they do it really well. And this is why Breakfast in America works. It was basically the final form of Supertramp. And of course I can't leave out the title track, which apparently was written way before this album. What's the hit on this album? The song Breakfast in America. I wrote that 12 years before I chose it. But it felt like, okay, this is the collection of songs that this song might belong to, so we included it.
Okay.
And obviously it was a great album title, so we chose that. In any case, it helped spearhead the album to unexpected heights.
Could we have kippers for breakfast? Mommy dear, mommy dear.
It topped charts across the world and had at least 4 different hits on it, with The Long Way Home, The Logical Song, and Goodbye Stranger, all over the radio as well. But this overnight superstardom would soon become a black cloud for Supertramp. It was the beginning of...
Hang on. I've got questions. What do they mean by Breakfast in America? What does that mean? Supertramp was a British rock band formed in London. What do they mean by Breakfast in America? What are they talking about? Take a look at my girlfriend. She's the only one I got. Not much of a girlfriend. I seem to get a lot. I never seem to get a lot. Darn. Take a jumbo across the water. Like to see America. See the girls in California. These girls out here, y'all. They're like, oh my God, I'm hoping it's going to come true, but there's not a lot I can do. Hey, could we have kippers for breakfast? Mummy dear, mummy dear. They gotta have them in Texas, 'cause everyone's a millionaire. I'm a winner, I'm a sinner. Do you want my autograph? I'm a loser, what a joker. I'm playing my jokes upon you, while there's nothing better to do. Hey, don't you look at my girlfriend. She's the only one I got. Not much of a girlfriend. I never seem to get a lot. What she's got, not a lot. Take a jumbo across the water, like to see America, see the girls in California. Oh, okay, I'm hoping it's going to come true, but there's not a lot I can do. Roger Hodgson said, well, when I wrote Breakfast in America, obviously I had a lot of dreams. One of them was to go to America, and the America that we saw on television was very different to the America that we're very much more connected to today. It was very archetypal in a way. Everyone in Texas is a millionaire, for example. So a lot of my thoughts, want to see the girls in California. It was just a playful song. Part of, I think, dreaming of going to America. I think the Beatles maybe had just gone to America. Maybe that affected it. But again, I was dreaming and having fun one day, and this song just flowed out. I think the lyric was written in about an hour, so I didn't even stop to think what I was writing. It just came out of me. Y'all, that's a common theme with songwriting. Just let it flow out. And then you look back on it later and say, oh, that was about that. Interesting. Okay, back to the video.
Superstardom would soon become a black cloud for Supertramp. It was the beginning of the end for Hodgson in the band. After the success of Breakfast in America, Hodgson wanted to keep it going, write songs that would actually sell commercially. Davis, however, wanted to go back to the prog days and write big suites. And so often happens between songwriters, they couldn't meet in the middle. Hodgson left after the aptly named Famous Last Words in 1983. In fairness, he also had a young family with 2 children to think about and wanted to take care of them. But the fallout really started when Rick Davis broke a simple agreement. When Hodgson left, they decided that Davis could keep going as Supertramp, but wouldn't use the songs Hodgson had written. Apparently the whole thing was carried on a simple verbal agreement, witnessed by the band, and actually was respected for a good few years.
But if Rick Davies plays the songs that Roger Hodgson wrote, Roger Hodgson would get that money, right? So get that money, Roger.
Tramp would become a vehicle for him and his music, and I would start a career with my songs and my voice. That's the only reason I agreed to give him the name. The difficult part came when he broke that agreement and started playing my songs 5 years later. That hurt very deeply. I felt betrayed. Despite being angry about it, there wasn't much that Hodgson could do. It was only a verbal agreement. He didn't have any basis to take it to court. But what followed was a bitter feud. Efforts to settle the argument always broke down. Hodgson would eventually try and reconcile with Davis, even offering to do some special shows together, but Davis always declined. According to Hodgson, he claimed the shows would only benefit him, as in Hodgson, and not Davis. What's strange is it's very hard to find any comment from Davis about this whole saga. Hodgson has said if it wasn't for this betrayal over the songs, he may well have reunited with the band. After Hodgson's departure, the other 3 members of the classic lineup would remain involved, particularly in the studio, but it was basically a revolving lineup of touring and session musicians.
I wonder what the monetary agreement was, because, like I said, if Richard Davies is playing Roger's songs, like, Roger's still getting that money, right? I don't understand.
So much so that it's genuinely hard to keep track of who was and who wasn't in the band.
Oh my God.
Effectively, the classic Supertramp was over after 1983. Their last album was in 2002, and they've been more or less retired ever since. But there's a final twist in this story. They tried to stop paying royalties to half the band. Now, remember I said that after Crime of the Century, Supertramp were finally making money? Well, I won't bore you with all the numbers, but legal agreements were drawn up to decide who got what portions of those royalties. Davis and Hodgson owned a company that paid the royalties to the other 3 members of the agreement. That was until 2018, when they abruptly stopped. In 2021, a lawsuit was opened. Davis quickly settled in 2023, but incredibly, the courts fell in favour of Hodgson in 2024, allowing him to break the contract. This would quickly be reversed the next year. And it's quite a sad ending to the legacy of Supertramp, isn't it? But it just goes to show that sometimes, and also a lot of the times, success can be your own undoing.
Wait, I'm confused about that. But okay, so Roger and Rick owned a company together.
Hodgson owned a company that paid the royalties to the other 3 members of the agreement.
Okay, I feel sorry for these other 3 guys, but I'm more interested in the Rick and Roger feud. Was Roger not getting paid?
That was until 2018, when they abruptly stopped.
Okay, so Roger and Rick, both owning this company, stopped paying the other 3? Is that what he's saying?
2021, a lawsuit was opened. Davis quickly settled in 2023, but...
Okay, so Davis paid them off.
Incredibly, the courts fell in favour of Hodgson.
Wait, so I'm confused about what the lawsuit was by. Was it the other 3 members against Rick and Roger, or was it Rick against Roger? I'm confused.
2024, allowing him to break the contract. This would quickly be reversed the next year. And it's quite a sad ending to the legacy of Supertramp, isn't it? But it just goes to show that sometimes, and also a lot of the times, success can be your own undoing. And this whole story reminds me a lot of Hall and Oates. Money and success also became a wedge that drove them apart as well.
Yeah.
In fact, one of their songs told everyone about it before it was public knowledge. You can watch the video I made about that here.
Out of Touch. I love that song. You're out of touch. I'm out of time. But, okay, this happens a lot in the music industry. If you want the band to stay together, everybody in the band needs to get writing credit and get those royalties. But a lot of time what happens is there's one or two guys in the band who are writing all the songs. They get all the royalties for the songwriting, and the other guys in the band are just getting paid for live performances and recording the album, and maybe album sales, but they don't get that writing money. That's where it is. That's the writing money that you want. If you want the band to stay together, you got to share those writing credits. It's a tough thing to do. But it'll keep the band together. Let's look up this lawsuit. Forbes. Publishing income sharing agreements exist among major acts in the music business. The platinum level acts such as U2 and the Red Hot Chili Peppers built their careers by establishing royalty sharing ground rules at an early stage, thereby avoiding costly litigation and personal conflict later on. U2 and the Chili Peppers know what's up, y'all. Even the Beatles didn't get it. The Supertramp and police lawsuits invite us to reassess the value of their recording catalogs and to consider the issues arising from these conflicts more than 4 decades after the commercial peaks of both groups. A recent federal appeal court judgment pitting 3 members of British group Supertramp against their former lead singer Roger Hodgson, who left the band in 1983, reveals the positives and perils of sharing songwriting royalties. So those 3 band members were suing Roger, the guy who left. The August 20th ruling determined that Hodgson's decision to halt royalty payments to the 3 other band members in 2018 breached a 1977 agreement requiring him to maintain sharing songwriting royalties once Supertramp's catalog continued to generate income. Since their first commercially successful album, Crime of the Century, released in 1974, through to their 1979 quadruple platinum selling album, Breakfast in America, Hodgson and keyboardist Rick Davies, who died in September 2025, at 81, shared the songwriting credits on each of the 4 LPs constituting the group's peak era. Hodgson and Davies were the only group members reaping publishing profits while the recording royalties and tour revenues were being used to pay off earlier advances from A&M Records. Okay. Consequently, to maintain band harmony and relieve financial pressure, Hodgson and Davies agreed to reduce their royalty share, splitting their substantial publishing income between the other band members and the group's manager. The songwriting pair were sued in 2021 for terminating the payments in 2018. Okay, so they both were getting sued. And although Hodgson won a trial in 2024 with Davies, who remained a member of the band, settling out of court in 2023, the new verdict means that the agreed revenue split must continue. Okay, so it sounds like there were a couple lawsuits, one between the other 3 members and Roger, and then the other 3 members and Roger and Rick, and the other 3 members and Rick settled. Roger didn't. Okay. Wow. Looks like the police are going through it too. See, they broke up. It's, yeah. Common tragedy. Happens all the time. Smashing Pumpkins. Anyway, y'all be sure to go to Music Mongoose and like and subscribe. I'd like to thank my patrons. I'd like to thank my Buy Me a Coffee folks. Thank y'all for watching this with me, and I'll see y'all next time.